G'day ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Draw with Jazza. I'm Jazza, and in this week's video we're going to be looking at elemental effects. These are things like fire, ice, lightning, acid, that kind of thing. And we're going to be creating them in a way which will be fairly quick to reproduce and to make, so we won't spend too long on each one. And that way, hopefully, those who have requested elemental effects in animation can kind of muck around with the animation side of it themselves, because we can't really animate each of them today. And those who want to use it for the painting side of things in Photoshop can kind of take their time and make it more detailed. So we're going to be in a bit of a mid-ground, creating it simplistically so that we can go through it. So I've got this here. This is my base. This is my character who is summoning stuff. And at the moment, he's not summoning anything. He's just standing there going, I'm a hobo. But we're going to transform him from a hobo into a renegade mage-looking dude. So this is our base. We're going across, and our first one is fire. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a lighting base on this character, because I want to show where the flames will be affecting him. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the image of his body. I'm going to copy that frame and paste it above it, exactly above it. And I'm just going to color the whole thing in red for now. And I'm going to put that on a, what do you call that? I'm just going to show the edges and lock the frame underneath, and I'm going to divide this into two halves. And I'm going to do this in such a way that it kind of follows the outline of the guy's face. Okay, so I'm just going to chop that out. I'm just going to do this for all different sections of places that protrude that the light will reflect against. So that's something to kind of keep in mind when you're doing this stuff, is that you're not just drawing a light effect, you're also drawing how that light affects the things it's lighting, if that makes sense. So you're not just drawing the fire, you're drawing the glow on the surfaces of things nearby that the fire is reflecting upon. Because these things affect more than just itself. Now, I'm probably confusing you. It doesn't look like I'm doing anything in particular right now. I'll just keep going so you can see the final result, and hopefully it will be clear, because it's hard to kind of see what I'm doing while I'm doing it in this mode. Okay, so when I zoom out now, you can see that when I take off the wireframe, I've got this red edge glow. And the idea that I've tried to follow, basically, is that if I had a light in this hand, a really strong red light, and a red light in this hand, where would that light bounce against? It would be on the edges of his body and on the edges of his face, and particularly more strong around the arm area. So I should probably make it a bit more strong around there. So this is much harsher than it's going to end up being, but I just wanted to get that basic thing done, because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to select a gradient, just a simple gradient like this, and paste it like that, but I'm going to change the properties to be, on the inside, a really faint 0% alpha yellow, and then on the other end, an orange, and bring it really low to maybe 20% alpha. Okay, so in fact I could make that a bit stronger, and I'll make it a bit more red, and let's go 40%, see how that looks. Okay, so I like that. So now that I've got my glow, I'm going to paste that in a way that adds that bounce to all these areas of the body. Okay, so now what I want to do now is refine it by selecting the gradient transform tool and just stretching it in a way that makes all of them look fairly even. Because the problem is this one drags across more to the middle of the body than the other one, because the line goes out more. So I just got to make them look a bit even and cover them all in a fairly even sort of way. Okay, so I've transformed my gradients for the most part. And this already, you can already begin to see that there's more happening here than in this image. Just going back and forth, you can see that there's a really effective sort of, there's light coming from somewhere, there's power coming from somewhere. And so it already makes him look somewhat magical. So now we're going to jump into the fire itself. So I'm going to add a layer on top, and I'm going to lock what we've just done so that the only unlocked frame is the one I'm about to draw on. And just to recap, the layers that we have here, and this is in Adobe Flash, but you could do this in layers in Photoshop and things like that. On the bottom, we have our just black background. Then in front of that, we have this character. Then on top of him, we have that light that we just did. And next, we're going to be doing the element itself, the fire. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to zoom in on this hand, and I'm going to create a orange material, drawing with a brush. And I'm going to draw fire organically around his hand. Okay, now fire is something that you kind of get used to drawing. I'm not going to go into too much detail as to how I'm drawing these elements. You'll get a rough idea as to how I'm doing it. Go look at images on the internet. But the basic idea is you really want a flowy, organic look. You don't want anything too sharp or unnatural. You have flickers and it's supposed to look, you know, fairly rough. And I want it to kind of go along his arm a bit, like his burning. And I might bring it up here a bit more. Add a little flame lick. That's another thing to remember with fire, is you have little flame licks like that. I'm going to come over to the other side and do the same thing. So have the fire kind of flowing along the arm like that. I'm not sure I like that curve. A lot of the emphasis on the flames is about the natural curves that happen. And you don't want them too big or too weird, but you want them to look good at the same time. So you kind of got to be a bit risky, but you also don't want to be too out there. Okay. So now when I zoom out, here we have our character with our rough form of fire on his hands. So what we're going to be doing is making these very filter based. So I'm going to select what I've just drawn, hit F8 and convert it to a movie clip, and I'll call it fire. Hit enter. And now over here in my filters panel, which I should enlarge so you can see it better. Oops. Okay, so I've got filter on the left, and I'm going to click this little add filter button and go glow. I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to add a nice orange, rich orange, maybe even closer to red, and bring it out, make it fairly large, make it high quality. Next, I'm going to create another glow down here, add glow. This one's going to be much more to a neutral orange, and it's going to be an inner glow. So we do this by clicking this box here where it says inner glow, make it nice and strong, pop it out a bit. And I think the way they stack on each other affects how they show. I want to make it a bit clearer, so I'm going to go in here and make this one lighter and closer to a yellow, like that. So now when I come back out, you can see that inner glow much stronger. So I bring up the intensity. This outer glow I'm going to make a bit closer to orange, like that, and this one I'll make it a bit closer to red. There we go. So now we're starting to get the look that we want. Now it's obviously too intense, it's too strong, and I want it more transparent. So two things I'm going to do. I'm going to add a blur, so we can see there that we've added this blur. I'm going to bring all of these qualities up to high, and I'm going to bring my blur down to 3, and I'm going to go up here to alpha, and I can bring the alpha down, but I don't want it too low. So let's see how 80 looks. Okay, so I don't mind that, but what we can do, and I want to see how this works, is we can work with blend modes, right? So you can see here we've got display blending. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to find one that I think works to make the fire look intense. And one that works quite often is screen, and that works quite well. So if I show normal, and you can see how that overlays, and now when I go to screen, it kind of adds that brightness, that intensity. So I'm going to work with that. I quite like that. Okay, so I'm happy with how that looks. I'm happy with that. I'm going to now unlock and select the lighting that I've done on this character, and I'm going to make this outer orange. I'm going to make it a bit more of a closer to yellow orange, because it's got to fit the fire color. Because that's the thing, is like the color reflecting on him needs to be closer to the color of the fire itself. because before it was a bit too red, and now we've got this nice yellow glow. And that is one thing that you'll kind of notice about fire when you draw fire, is that it's more orange and yellow than it is red, and people kind of associate fire with red. So this is our fire. I think I'm almost happy with that and ready to move on because we don't spend too long on it. But just a couple of things that I'm going to do. First of all, I'm going to go out here and add a circle gradient with no edge. So I'm going to add a circle gradient like this. I'm going to select that, and on the inside, I'm going to make it yellow like this, and on the outside, I'm going to make it orange. Make the outside 0% alpha and make the inside really low, like 8. Maybe higher than that. Maybe 24. Yeah, that's quite good. And I'm going to put 1 on each hand. Simple. And then what we've got is this glow emanating with the fire. And then last but not least, I'm going to change the color of the background to match the color of our element. So we have a fire element. So this background is much more fiery now. And I am pretty darn happy with that. So you can see immediately how much different that looks. Our base with nothing, and then boom, he's a fire elementalist. He's still a hobo. Maybe he's just a hobo on fire. Anyways, so next we want to move on. We don't want to spend too long on this. So the next one is going to be ice. And so we're going to use some of the things that we've already done to work with ice. So I'm going to select my background and change this to more of a blue, so that we don't have to do that later. I'm going to delete, I won't delete the whole thing, I'm just going to delete the symbol of the fire. And I'm going to keep these glows, and I'm just going to change the colors. So the inside is going to be like a really light, almost white blue, and the outside will be more of a mid blue. Okay, so you can see already we've got that happening. And then I'm going to unlock, and remember, if you're doing what I'm doing and altering the frames, you've got to make sure that you hit F6 or, duplicate that keyframe into a new keyframe. Anyway, so I'm going to select my gradient here, and I'm going to alter the colors. So the colors that I generally work with ice are a near white, sort of light blue, and that's kind of the color range that we're sticking to. So already you can see that we're almost there. We've really got a lot of that done already just simply by that. So now we've got to figure out how we're going to make the element exist on him, so it shows that he's summoning this element and they're going to be in his hands. So I'm going to be working with two things with ice. I'm going to be working with the physical ice itself, so that would be like the chunk of ice crystals or whatever that is. But then I'm also going to be working with smoke or fog, because as you know, if you have something really cold, there's this kind of smoke that comes out of it, and that really helps add to that aesthetic. So I'm going to create a new layer, and I'll keep the glowy layers on top. And I'm going to go in here, I'm going to hide my glowy layer, and I'm going to zoom in, and I'm just going to grab white, and I'm going to draw some really hard crystal-like shapes like this. I have a few things on the outside just to kind of signify a bit of a floating look. I'm going to come over here and do the same thing. I want it all to kind of zoom out. When I zoom out, I want it to look, yeah, see that even alone look like that in its base form looks like it's somewhat like ice. So if I select that, hit F8, and I'm going to convert it to a symbol and call it ice. Hit enter. Now I'm going to go to my trusty filters again, because filters, and gradients when it comes to effect. So what kind of filters will we use for this? Well, I don't want to change the opacity too much, but I will bring it down to, bring the alpha to 90%.